Welcome to Kara's Cures, where we explore the cutting edge of wellness. I'm Kara Sundland. Today, we're looking at the downside of hustle culture. And it's what's driving the resignation nation. My guest is Jinny Uppal, who just wrote a book called In Action, Rethinking the Path to Results. Welcome, Jinny.
Thank you. It's wonderful to be here, Kara.
So statistics show that 4 million people actually left their jobs in September. We're seeing a lot of people after the pandemic saying, I just can't do it anymore. What's your take on what's happening out there?
I believe that the Great Resignation has been a long time coming. For years, people have become very accustomed to working 60, 80-hour work weeks. And we assumed, all of us, that that's the norm. If you want to be successful, you have to work hard, you have to double down. And we made ourselves believe that is it. That is the only way to be successful, is to work very hard and long hours. The pandemic, unfortunate as it was, it kind of helped us reach a tipping point where it made matters much worse. The long hours, the 80 hours became, 100 hours. And it made a lot of us feel this can't go on, right? There is no end to this goal, this journey. And so in that sense, it was one of those unexpected benefits that people have come to realize, I don't want to live this way. The other compounding factor was people also started realizing, I don't want to deal with the toxic work culture that I've been used to for quite a while. So I feel like all of those things came together, and now we've woken up to the fact that we've allowed this to go on long enough, and now we have to empower ourselves and realize this is not the only way to being successful.
And talk a little bit about your background and maybe the personal reason why you wrote this book, because you're no stranger to working hard or driving yourself or striving.
Right. I have a 20-year corporate background driving growth in Fortune 500 companies. And so I have lived that life. And as a matter of fact, I used to always think I'm very action-oriented. And that is why I am successful, because I took bold action and I worked hard, hence why I became successful. During the pandemic, I found myself without a job. So I had a downtime, which I actually hated because I don't know what to do with myself when I don't have a lot to do. And looking back into my life, Kara, I noticed something. I've had a non-linear career path. So I've had a few pivots, which means I made a very big change. I went to say from telecom to e-commerce. Before every big change, which led to a burst of progress, I realized that I did have a downtime. I hated being in it, but having those moments of what I would have called underproductive moments of inactivity, I actually came up with some new idea. And then I did something. I did take action ultimately. So this book really started as a question in my mind. What really drives progress? Is it tangible action and things I do? Or is it those moments of what I call strategic inaction, thoughtful pauses, where maybe some creative idea comes forth, an inspired thought comes forth, and then you take action. Ultimately, you do what you have to do. And what I found in the book, based on my own experience, interviews with successful people, as well as research, is maybe I did have it all wrong myself. Mm-hmm. You do need action, but you don't need as much action as we tend to take in our lives. That moments of pauses will actually help you leapfrog.
Right. Okay. So the downside of hustle culture is fatigue, burnout, mistakes. The upside of taking a pause, as scary and as uncomfortable that can feel when we're not doing anything, because I think most of us are used to being human doings, right, not beings.
Yes.
But how do you do that? How do you do, let's just say you didn't lose your job or you're not taking a forced pause. How do you be strategic about these moments to lead you to the next big thing?
Great question. I will share from my own experience. So I wrote the book this year, and it took about 1 year for me to write and publish the book, which is actually not a lot of time. All things considered, it takes years to write. So in many ways, writing and publishing a book in 1 year is a recipe for burnout. Like, you could actually burn out. So I had a chance to drink my own Kool-Aid. And I really started with small pauses. 10-minute breaks, 20-minute breaks. The busier my day is, counterintuitive as it may sound, the more I have back-to-back meetings, the more I have things to do and deadlines, I need to introduce more breaks, and they could be short. It could be 5 minutes, 10 minutes, but it is phenomenal, the amount of relief it brings to your brain, because at some point, my brain just can't produce anymore, even if I keep trying to. and giving my mind just some free rein. All sorts of creative ideas come through. I started sitting for 10 minutes staring out the window and letting my mind, and there's neuroscience research I came across that when you're not focused on an activity, your brain starts to connect the dots on data and information that you've been gathering and comes up with creative ideas. And that's what you need to take action on. So start small, 10 minutes a day if you're very busy, and then build it up from there.
Yeah, so there's science to this about, if you want to know, oh, but I need to be productive, I need to be productive. The actual taking that break is going to lead you to be more productive is what you found. I talk a lot in Kara's Cures about the sacred grind. We still have a daily grind. We're going over, I'm still a mom and I'm still having a busy career in media. But finding those little pockets in your day, you're saying it's not a time to just scroll or not a time to even read a book, but more to actually do nothing.
That's an important distinction. The neuroscience research that I came across says when we are not focused on an activity, which means our senses are not occupied. When you're reading a book, you are reading, your mind is processing. Even when you're listening to music, even though if it's relaxing music, you're taking in the sound. When we are not doing an activity, there are parts of the brain that light up called the default mode network. And when the brain is in the DMN or default mode network phase, that's when it starts to connect dots on information you have been collecting. And this research has been going on for about 20 years. I had not come across this before this, but it's a very powerful insight. So yes, our tendency of scrolling social media, catching up on the news, I would say all of that, take a break from all of it.
I can't remember the author, but there's something also about having a work cycle. And for children, it might be smaller, 30 minutes or so. But there was a book called The 90-Minute Work Cycle, where you have things set up in a day. You're going to work productively for 90 minutes, and then maybe you're going to schedule that purposeful break. And maybe at work, it might just be, or if you're taking care of small children, it might just be that you're going to the bathroom and you're going to feel your feet on the ground, or you're going to breathe when you get there. I mean, there's ways to kind of make this routine for yourself.
That is true. A lot of people tell me my lifestyle is such that I have back-to-back meetings. I just cannot. Sometimes we feel helpless, or we are going through a phase in a project where we simply cannot find the time. And what I say in that case is the fact is you probably do have time during the day. It's just that you spend it on checking up on the news or doing something else. So in that case, whichever break you can get, if you're going for a 2-hour meeting, then after the 2-hour meeting, take the break. This is discipline, Kara, I believe that has to come from us. Just as running the hamster wheel is a habit we developed over time, this is a habit you have to develop over time. And I recommend to people, don't be too ambitious. Start with 5 minutes wherever you can get during the day, but make it a goal or an objective that today I will take a 10-minute break whenever I can get it, and then up the ante. Make it 20 minutes the next time.
Well, and the culture is that you're doing something good, right? We get a little bit of positive reinforcement if we're striving and we're busy. But the science is showing the opposite, that if you're striving to the point of stress and you're doing too much, you're actually not being as productive as you could be and not thriving.
Right. That is more like a collective social behavior we all got accustomed to back in 2019. I shared a bit earlier. There was an article in New York Times about how in the last 10 years, a whole new category of social media celebrities and influencers came about. And they started sharing how hard they work, their hustle lifestyle, and how they were successful. And that became a glamorous thing. We started glorifying hustling. People started bragging how hard they are working. So it's even though actual science tells us you don't need to do that, our social behavior is what tells us we should do what others are doing. And if we don't work hard as these other people, we're going to be left behind. Fortunately, now there's another class of influencers, and my book, In Action, Rethinking the Path to Results, there are other books like that are starting to present a counter narrative. We mislead ourselves when we say we got to work hard all the time. If we take a break, we're probably going to get there faster without the burnout. So I'm hoping that a lot other voices will join me. And it's a simple fact. You want to be successful. I'm all for ambition. have all the ambition you want, but to get there, don't burn yourself out on the way. And there is an alternative to that.
Yeah. Just to offer, I know we talked about this earlier on Great Day Connecticut, but Arianna Huffington, who wrote the book Thrive, and I've interviewed her a few times, where she actually did the research where corporations have noticed that when they, put in meditation classes or put in, some of them even have technology that you can't check your email past 7 p.m., the bottom lines got better. It wasn't just being kind to yourself, but I think she had a line that the big ideas are like fish. You have to go deep to get the good ones. So if we're not resting, we can't really go to the deeper, wiser parts of our minds.
Totally with you.
Yeah. So this is, tell us a little bit about the book. If people want to get the book, is there a little bit of prescription in there about, just even how we can start thinking about this and maybe incorporating it to go from striving to more thriving?
I've interviewed about 30 successful people across the world who shared stories of how they have, some of them burnt out, lessons learned, and some of them actually found either by accident or trial and error. Meditation is very popular, of course. At the same time, and I've been a practitioner since 2008, so I swear by it. I attest to the powerful benefits of it. At the same time, a lot of people find meditation very intimidating. So the neuroscience research I'm talking about actually presents mind wandering, something that we usually think is a negative behavior. We associate mind wandering with a distracted mind, but I present mind wandering as a practice. You can actually take 10 minutes out, let your mind wander.
Just like
daydreaming. I talk about other ideas which are also very counterintuitive, like procrastinating. A lot of us feel pressure to do everything now, but we underestimate how many things in life are negotiable and how that pressure will not help you get the right solution. Sometimes you've got to take a step back. You've got to let it go. And having published the book, it's a very deadline-driven activity. I've tried many of those techniques. My book is going to be out in a few weeks. And I think the best way to engage with me and learn more about the book is to go to my website, jinnyuppal.com/book. And in it, I have interviews, stories, research, techniques that people can try.
Yeah. What was the hardest thing for you as a recovering type A?
The hardest thing was to trust that when I'm approaching a deadline and there is pressure, my default behavior is to double down. I have determination. I have willpower. I know I've done this before. I know what it is to just hammer it out. Kara, I cannot tell you how hard it was. There was a deadline for my book cover design, and I decided not to hammer it out, not to spend 3-4 hours. I went to Manhattan. It was like the most difficult thing I've done. Of course, I come back and on the train, I have fantastic creative ideas. So it's still difficult. I will say, I think of thoughtful inaction as a practice. 1 year later, I'm still practicing it. It's still effort for me to let it go, walk away from the problem, and trust that I'll come up with a creative idea.
Yeah, that is hard, right? That's the trust that you're not just going to come up blank, or that I like your idea that we can push it a little bit. I think as moms too, often we're running and you end up, maybe yelling at your kids in a way you don't want to because you're like, I have to. And part of this you're saying is take away the have to. There's a lot of stuff we say we have to do that maybe are not quite as urgent as we make them out to be.
Right. A lot of people I interviewed who are very successful and they figured out how to overcome this tendency. Interestingly, they talked about guilt. They feel guilty when they take the break. So the voice in your head that is going to goad you into action or make you feel guilty, I have bad news. That voice never goes away. It's just that you've got to tell yourself, I'm operating from a place, I'm in the long game. This is not the hill I want to die on. I want to live to see another day. I've started using that for myself, that this is not the hill I want to die on. Mm-hmm. So that voice that compels you into action and guilts you will probably hang around forever. It's just a discipline. It's a decision we have to make that I'm going to take this break for myself and I'm going to come back energized and, stronger and more effective.
Right. Well, maybe that voice will get a little softer and you can get a bigger voice that tells you that Trust yourself.
Yep.
With time. Life is certainly a marathon, not a sprint, something we all need to hear. Very interesting, and I love that you've written about super successful people and how they might be having to do it a different way. I want to put up, let our viewers and listeners know, again, where they can find you. Jinny Uppal, that's JinnyUppal.com. And is the book just available on your website or any other place that people can find it? And shout out the title one more time.
The title is in/action, Rethinking the Path to Results, and it's going to be available online everywhere you buy books in a few weeks. So before the end of the month, it will be out, and a few selected bookstores.
Okay, and just because this could live on for a long time on the podcast, and we're early December now, so look for it, maybe even a holiday gift for the striver in your world. Thank you so much, Jinny.
Thank you for having me. It was a pleasure.
Yes. Well, we're glad to have some great information out there. Enjoy your season. And if you want more information on the cutting edge of wellness, you can also watch more Kara's Cures right here on the streaming app. You'll find them, maybe want to explore some of the other topics I also share on social media. So follow me there at Kara Sundlin.